Hello, guys, and welcome to Diaspora Connect. As promised last week, we are starting our very first episode. And joining me today in the studio, we thought who could be the best person to, join us for the first one. And given that we're in Queensland, Australia, we decided the best person to invite first was the chairman of the ZQCC, which is the Community for Zimbabweans in Queensland. His name is Fredy Mashate. Fredy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for creating this beautiful platform and for having me as your first guest. Looking forward to the discussions that we're going to be having. And thank you to your viewers as well for listening in. And we hope that they will be inspired by the few things that we share.
I sure hope they will be inspired because I think you've got an interesting and beautiful story to tell. So thank you so much for joining us. So I think people are interested in knowing who is Fredy Mashate outside of the title.
Okay, so Fredy is a guy that was born in Zimbabwe. And when I grew up, I was raised by a single parent who worked tirelessly as a domestic worker to provide her family. She instilled values such as hard work, resilience, and, compassion as values. And these are some of the things that we have grown up with and inform how we interact with the world and how we react to the things that the world kind of throw to us. She said in her teachings, when it comes to hard work, it's about how you show up. Whatever it is that you do it with your utmost and do it as unto the Lord. So whatever it is that you hold with your hands, whatever it is that is the fruit of your mind that you're giving out, let it be fit for a king. And when we spoke about resilience, she would say, it's not going to be easy. It's a journey that you take on, and scripture then comes in and says that in this world you have many tribulations, but take heart because I have overcome the world. So she would say in that journey, when struggle comes, continue pushing because it's that continuous push that will ensure that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Lastly, when it comes to compassion, it's about leading with heart instead of mind. I think that we tend to reason a lot of things, but where emotional intelligence is involved, I think that in this world we would not have a lot of the wars that we have, would not have a lot of the suffering that we have. So these were things that she was teaching, not through word, but through action. When we saw her working so hard, day in, day out, dedicating her life to ensure that we were schooled, we were fed, we were clothed, and received anything that pertains to the basics of life. That inspired us. And if I can just add a small, there are people that say a single mother can take care of 10 kids, and yet 10 kids cannot take care of one single mother. Just looking at that, it just tells a story of the tenacity and the sacrifices that my mother in particular would have given to ensure that she brings me up. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's an introduction. So where did you grow up?
Oh, so I was born, and thank you for, kind of posing this question, born in Masvingo.
Okay.
And in my early years, so when I remember myself trying to date back to the early years of my life, I see myself in Ngubenja, which is in Bulawayo. Then fast forward it a little bit, I remember then being in Hillside, where she was employed as a domestic worker. There I did my primary education, and before she left for Harare because work was moving to Harare, I stayed there in Bulawayo with a friend of mine for some time. And this is a theme that will also come about later on. So at a later stage, I moved to Harare, where I started school, which was my high school. And I only did 2 years there. At some point, I was really interested in soccer. I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player. But that was not to be, because my academics started to suffer. And my mom thought that it would be a good idea to send me into the rurals, and that was to be Mount Darwin, where I stayed with my uncle for some time. And just before I finished my A-levels, I went to Wange, where I stayed with my brother for a while. But what you'll see from all this is that I then became a person that was raised in the community, raised by the community, and now, raised for the community. That notion of Ubuntu, umuntu ngomuntu ngabantu, which literally translates in Shona to munu munu navanu. And in English, the loose translation would be a person is a person by the efforts of other people. So looking at where I'm coming from, I think that it was all those collective hands that put together whatever collaboratively to make sure that I was raised to become an upright, standing citizen that can contribute meaningfully in this day and age.
So growing up, what kind of hardships did you have to go through as a family, given that it was a single parent household, and mom was not doing the best of professions? When we look at it, how was life like?
Oh, life was difficult. Life was difficult. So it was myself and my mom for most of the time. My brother stayed with his my stepbrother. He stayed with his father's side of the family. So most of the time it was myself and my mom. And some of the memories that I have in recollection is when we did not have a meal for the night. Those days would come. And, leftovers that would be left off her master's. And I'm using that deliberately to say the master, because that was the relationship, off her master's table and reserved for the dogs. She would take that, she would wash that, and prepare a lovely warm meal so that we could, go to bed full. I remember that my mom, a hero she is, because she would not have shoes. Back in the day, would have maternity that would have holes everywhere, but would make sure that when it comes to me, my school uniform is sharp, my school shoes are sharp. She would go beyond and above to make sure that I don't feel the harshness of life. And that speaks to the sacrifice that she would give. But it was not easy. There's a lot of things that I can mention over the period from living in one room, and when you become a teenager, the dynamics of having to go out so that she can change. That was the life that I lived, and how we navigate those spaces, because now, as you are now a teenager, you need your own space as well. She needs her own space as a mom, and I'm a boy child. Those were some of the realities of the life that we were living. But I think that what was important in all this, and something that again comes from my mom, was never to look at our situation as the end, and never to be a beggar in that situation. So I was never, ever raised to, number one, have expectations towards the world, towards relatives, towards friends. I was raised to be content with what we have. And I was raised to know that life will not always be this way. If you then go back to those foundational principles, if you work hard, if you become resilient and lead with compassion, there is a chance that life will change. So keep that hope until you see the change.
Yeah, there are a lot of nuggets in there. We're learning. So given all the sacrifices that you saw your mom, do for the family, how was your approach to school? I know we've spoken about, playing around a bit because of the soccer and, that pulling you back. But how was your general, starting from primary school, how was the approach like?
Well, interesting question, because initially you don't see anything wrong, right, with what the strife and the struggle that you're going through. Because initially your worldview is very narrow. This is what we have. It is fine. So when I started school in the early days, my mom, and it's with many Zimbabwean parents, it was very, very important for her that I was able to read. So by the time I started year one, I did not go to preschool. I could speak English to a degree, at least introduce myself. I could read a few words, and how it happened, I think it was through memory, because she would say, I've forgotten the book, but there was a character called Sally. Maybe someone that is watching would have read some of those books, and she would say, Sally walked the dog, if that was the sentence, and I would have needed to memorize that, because if that would not have happened, I was going to be in big trouble. So it was not like learning through phonics, what the kids of nowadays do. But going into school, very average, because I think in that day and age, a very competitive school, Hillside Junior, very good school as well in Bulawayo. So, you would come back home, passed everything, but your number is not quite where you want it to be. I then moved on to high school. There, I think soccer became my main focus. I think I was at Marlborough High School in Harare, and I had a few friends of mine. If we were not playing soccer, then we were termed ourselves the Rough Riders with bikes. We were riding in the neighborhood, I guess terrorizing the neighborhood to an extent. And maybe in those days, school was not on the top of the agenda. Soccer was, and having fun with friends. So I guess when mom said, look, I'm now taking this decision, you are going to Mount Darwin. This was a rural district. Of course, we're staying in a growth point where there was access to electricity and TV and all these things, but still it was a huge change. I'd been living in high walls in Hillside, living in high walls in Marlborough, and all of a sudden now I need to go to Mount Darwin. So I got there, and special mention to my cousin. He was the best man at my wedding.
Oh, okay.
A very close relationship that we have. Rodney is his name. He was a focused young man. Got there, this man, whilst we're sleeping, he's waking up at night and is reading books, man. And I thought something is wrong with me. And this is me in Form 3, and the level of understanding that he had of our school was important, and potentially maybe in that time he didn't articulate it that way, but how education could be a key was amazing. So I studied him, and he was a source of inspiration to me. And as time went on, I saw myself also waking up at night, holding a book. So in my O-levels, I did not do that well. But for someone that was, it was in 2008, and you might remember this was a year where we did not have teachers, and then we're in the rural areas, but I came out with my 5 O-levels. Not that impressive. Moved on to A-levels. When I got there, I can tell you that I ended up becoming the second best at the school, Wange High School, where I was. Wow. So in terms of the points that I got, I was the second best at that school.
That's impressive.
So it just shows how the transition, and as you grow older, you start to see reality, to say, without this notion of education, I'm going nowhere. And maybe I should focus a little bit more so that I change my own life and that of those around me.
I'm just thinking, if it was me moving from Marlborough to Mount Darwin, I think that was like a huge challenge mentally. And looking at the realities that we're used to and everything like that. Outside of school, what was going on in your head at that time? When mom says you're packing, you're going Kumusha? What's going on in your head?
I think in the beginning, a little bit of anger. Because I didn't understand. This was my mom.
Yeah.
It had been always me and my mom through and through. From when I was born, all I knew was me and my mom. All of a sudden, I'm going to Form 3 and she says, you're going to the raw areas. I did not understand it. But I think as I started to see the value of education and why she needed to take me out of that environment that I was in terms of soccer and thinking that I was going to be a professional player. I think I was playing for a team that was in League 3. And even then, yes, I was playing in the first team of under 15s or something like that. But there was still a long way for me to become a professional footballer. So that gap between what reality is and what our perceptions of the immediate surroundings are, and your mom being able to see that and see the future and make a decision in that moment that impacts the future. I think I started to understand it when I was a bit older, especially I think after my O-levels, where I really started to focus in school and saying, I want more out of this life. I want more out of school. How can I use it as that key that everyone speaks about to unlock doors that have been closed all my life? And that's when I started to actually appreciate her. So yeah, I think I could say that I went through a little bit of depression because it is a huge change. I'm leaving my friends that I loved so much, the rough riders, it was difficult. So depression, though maybe it's not diagnosed at that moment in time, but I had my cousin, man. We became the best of friends, and in some instances we would go around terrorizing the neighborhood again, so we found a way to make it work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I know you got a scholarship, the Rhodes Scholarship. Tell us about that one. How did that opportunity come by?
Yeah. So the Rhodes Scholarship is actually the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. Is not the first scholarship.
Oh, okay.
The first scholarship that I ever got is when I finished second highest at Wange Government School. I approached a leader that was from our church, and this was even before we write the exam. And I said, look here, I did my O-levels. I did not pass that much. But now I know what I want. And I know that, he was a man of influence. And I was looking for guidance in that moment in time. And my story was to say, I can assure you that with the A-levels, my results are going to be flying. What can we do to ensure that we get to university? Because that was the first step. So he says to me, busy man of influence. He says to me, come back when you have your results for A-level. So as it was second highest, I go back to him. The presidential scholarship is what he led me to, guided me through the whole process. We put in a strong application. And I received the presidential scholarship to go and study at Rhodes University in South Africa. Bear in mind, I didn't even know Rhodes University when I was still doing my A-level. And all of a sudden now I have this scholarship that is paying for everything. It was paying for my food. It was paying for my tuition. It was paying for my accommodation. It was paying for my basic needs. And if you allow me, there's been many rhetorics around the scholarships, and maybe this is a platform that I can use to say, for someone like me that came from the raw areas, and I claim it because much of my adulting life then happened in Mount Darwin and part of it in Wange, where I finished off. These institutions, what happens is that normally most of the time you don't get 15 points. So the patron at that point in time, who was the President Robert Mugabe, sat with us and he shared his vision to say, Fredy coming from Wange Government School has got 11 points. And at that school, he's got 10 points. And at that school, he's the second highest with the highest level 11 points. What that means is that if we send them to any school in Zimbabwe, they can't study law. Because we know that the places to study law in Zimbabwe are few. So they won't be able to study anything of their choice. And for that matter, we are punishing them for being in the wrong environment. Whereas the South African education system was very different because it is what we call open to education. Come all that have the bare minimum and qualify to get in, and then prove yourself within the system to say you can actually do this. So it was a great vision that the patron had, and I'm a beneficiary of the Zimbabwean Presidential Scholarship. I learned at Rhodes University. It becomes the first scholarship, and life changes from there. I go through a transformation that I had never seen. I call mom when I get there and I say, Mom, I made it. I get in the dining hall, I put my finger on it, says, Miss Mashate, today you are eating normal or halal or whatever it is that I would have ordered for that day. I'd never seen that. Mom, my life has changed. I've got my own bedroom now. It was a ball of excitement, which can sometimes also derail you.
Yeah.
But we stayed the course, and yes, we then eventually got to the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship at some point and time. Yeah.
Yeah. So how has that helped your outlook on leadership? That whole process has it affected how you view leadership and
So my first leadership position is when I'm at Wange High School. And in that, and I'm talking about an official, I think that I would have held many non-official leadership position. And I was the president of Scripture Union at Wange High School, when it was not fashionable to be chasing after God on a Thursday or whatever day was dedicated for Scripture Union, would go there, preach the word. And there are many things that would have taught you. I get to Rhodes University. Mind you, this is an unfamiliar space. It's a space where we have now kids that are coming from our top tier schools, multiple classes of people, diverse in culture, etc. I get there first year. I put up my hand to be a wellness leader for my house. And this was going to be a person who's responsible for 40 boys. This is my first year. The wellness of the boys. So let me call them young men in terms of emotional wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, any kind of wellness. So people would come to me, speak to me, and I would be there to be offering a little bit of counseling. I engage in community engagement kind of activities. In my first year, I'm going out in the community through the society that I was with. We're buying what you call this tanks and installing them in communities that had no access to water. So already, I think leadership is being shaped, but it's a kind of leadership that had at the heart of its service. So whilst many would have seen it and interpreted it as leadership, when I was looking at it, it was just pure service. I think in my final year of law, which I was studying at Rhodes University, I was doing 15 other things apart of from my academics. So I was indulged.
Wow.
I was engaged. I was all in hungry. But at the heart of every effort was service, which I think that my leadership kind of outlook and orientation is around that subject of how do we serve? How do we make a difference?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I also know that you then became post your studies, you then getting into your professional life, you then worked with, is it the Science First?
Yes.
Tell me about that one.
Ooh, that one, you're taking me back.
Yeah.
So at the heart of every story that is related to me, there's a person. So, which is good because then it speaks again to community. How does the community raise a child? So all the stories, it can be the scholarship, there's a person, there's always a person. So I am doing my master's in commerce with a focus on taxation at Rhodes University, funded by the scholarship Mandela Rhodes. But in the back of my mind, I also have that and I should say we were well taken care of by that scholarship. Very prestigious, did a lot in terms of leadership development, and we can talk about that another day. So I'm doing that, but still there's a hunger within me to serve. that has never left me. So what I started doing during my master's is that with SciFest Africa, which is South Africa's national science festival. This is the biggest science festival on the African continent. Unfortunately, after COVID-19 has had a little bit of struggles, but massive, attracting 60 to 80,000 kids over 7 days. That's how massive this project is. So how I start is that I am brought in as a volunteer driver that would drive the team around the Eastern Cape when they go out on their outreach program. So I start as a driver, not paid. I'd get per diem so that I can get a little bit of meals here and there. Yeah. But for me, I would get to see the Eastern Cape. So it is a plus, and get to drive some of the most luxurious cars. It's a plus.
Yeah.
So what happens is that one day we are there, one of the facilitators, we were short of one facilitator, and mind you, I'd been looking at them running these programs, and I get an opportunity to kind of run a class, a workshop. I run this workshop. By the time I'm done, kids are all around me. They are crowding. I actually realized, look here, I think I've got a love for science. It's not something I particularly liked when I was in high school, but I think this is something I'm really interested in. So that becomes the start. I then am brought into the office working as logistics, travel and hospitality officer was my title then. And one day I just woke up, man, I went to the CEO's office and I said, look here, I love my job. I can do this job whilst sleeping, but something within me says that it's not enough. I think he had not had a young man, coming before him and being definite about what he wants for his life. Little did I know that destiny was also planning something big for me, because the next day, after I had spoken to my CEO, the current manager of SciFest Africa then resigns because she had found another opportunity and was going to be leaving. So my CEO calls me out of the blue and says, Fredy, how do you feel about managing SciFest Africa? And I said, what? I'm 27 at this moment in time. I'm a foreigner, as South Africans would say. I thought of myself as an international guest, but I'm a foreigner.
Yeah.
I do not have a science background. I have a law degree and I have a master's in commerce, and now I'm being invited to manage a science festival. So I could not believe it. But, when the word says that God qualifies the unqualified, I knew when I received that call that something greater was about to happen. So I said I was interested, and I can tell you that the rest is history. With that particular project, I got in, and being young, being a foreigner without a science background had many challenges, but I can tell you that with the team that we had, we managed to see through some of these challenges and had many wins to celebrate.
I think as you're speaking, I think one thing that has been consistent in the things that you're saying, well, this is to me, is there is a presence of God within every step that you have gone through. Just to think about the fact that you see the CEO today, the manager resigns tomorrow. Yep. If you had not seen him on that particular day, that opportunity would have missed you. So that's quite interesting. Well, to me, it's quite an interesting thing. So, young, non-scientist, foreigner managing a team in South Africa, also given, I think that was around a time where there was a lot of xenophobic attacks and all those things. What's happening there within the team and everyone else? How are people taking it?
So, project management 101.
Yeah.
And I don't have that experience. But what I have, and I think something that I've carried through, is the ability to create a platform for the right people to do what they are good at doing. So I get there, many questions are being asked. Obviously, he does not have a science degree. Even my team, I would think that at some point, because I had a team of scientists, people that had gone to school and studied science, they're thinking, will this manager be able to comprehend? And remember, all of a sudden, I'm now in a position where I need to be speaking to ministers. I am now in a position where I'm speaking to ambassadors, probing, asking for support, bringing in the necessary support that we needed to ensure that the project was a success. So I felt that from the get-go, there was always something to prove, not only for myself, but for the next young person that would be given an opportunity such as that. I always felt that there was an opportunity to prove ourselves as young people, being able to get into big projects and work collaboratively with those with much more experience, creating that space where they can come into that space and contribute meaningfully so that the project goes on. So that was what I was really busy with. If you look at my portfolio, it was massive because I entered the position when the director position, which used to be there, was not there. So which means that I was now also responsible for stakeholder engagement and bringing in the funds that make sure that the project runs. And at that point in time, COVID-19 also hit whilst I was manager, and what that meant in terms of the agility that we needed as a team to change and refocus so that we continue to produce what the mandate is, but in a different format. So some of the wins that came during that time were born out of some of those challenges. And I think that most of the wins were born out of the need to push and ensure that there was continuity for that project. But really at the core of it, the passion for the mission, which was to say, how do we create an awareness, an appreciation and understanding of science, technology, and innovation, so that as a people, when we engage even on such platforms, we can engage from a point of informed conversations around science and technology. So beautiful, beautiful opportunity, and really kind of guided the person that I became in project management from that point of view.
Interesting. So, and how does Australia happen? How do you then, the migration from South Africa to Australia, how does that opportunity come by?
So I've always wanted, I left Zimbabwe at age 19. I didn't go back. I then became a permanent resident in South Africa. By the time I left South Africa, I was 12 years into South Africa. But I always knew that there was a little bit more. So there are push factors. And these push factors are many, but maybe just to share a few that you'd come across if you meet anyone else that is living. One is economic. We are working hard, but not earning enough for you to be able to sustain self in South Africa and sustain the responsibilities that are back home. So South Africa being a rand economy and the Zimbabwean being a US dollar economy, it didn't make sense. I was earning enough to make a living in South Africa, and I could live large, not large, modest in South Africa. I was fine in South Africa. But there was always a burden to say, I've got responsibility that is greater than this. And is there something more outside? So there's that tendency to then want to look outside. The second thing that then is a push factor is one day I'm now working with a different organization, and I used to travel a lot, and sometimes I'll take my family. This is my wife, my little daughter, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning. We are sleeping in a 4-star B&B. And what happens is that at a certain point around 3 a.m., I hear someone screaming outside and say, hey. So I'm wondering what's going on outside. So when the security officer comes, he then relates a story to say, look, there was a person and he was one leg inside your room. Remember, it's a 4-star B&B. There's an electric fence. There is sensor beams that should have been gone off at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
There's a burglar bar, which is already gone because the body is halfway in. This guy is caught by the fourth kind of security measure, which is a security guard that is just doing his rounds.
Wow.
It got me thinking, if that guy had gotten into my room, what would have happened? My daughter is on a mattress sleeping on the floor. I'm with my wife sleeping on the bed. Would I have been able to protect them? In a country where the rates of murder, violence against women, and femicide are increasing on a daily basis, what is it that I can do as a man, as a father, as a husband to take my family to safety? So I wrote a recent post on Facebook and I said, what price would you pay for a good healthcare system? What price would you pay for a good education system? What price would you put on protecting your family? And so at a point in time, a decision had to be made. And that decision was to say, we had to look for greener pastures. So Australia then comes into play with pull factors and many of them, because we could have gone to the United States where I had visited at a certain point in time, came back home and said, I don't want to go back to the United States. I want to have nothing about leaving South Africa. A bunch of things that I didn't like about the United States. But I think if I go there, I would maybe have different experience depending on where you go and the context. The UK, we've got a lot of family that is in the UK, didn't like the weather. But my wife, who is a pharmacist, then started to also look at her as being the bridge to then exit South Africa. So an opportunity came to come to Australia, getting sponsorship, obviously, and the pathway to permanent residency and citizenship was clear and seemed to be quick. And those are some of the pull factors. The weather was a pull factor. So God designed it that we are in this part where we have more than 300 days of sunshine. And I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful.
Wow. So you've arrived in Australia. What was the expectation? Or before, I mean, visas are out. You know you're going to Australia. What's the expectation? What's going on in your head?
So there's that saying that the grass is greener on the other side. And someone in the UK who was a schoolmate was writing a post recently, and they said, we were asking questions around the subject of moving overseas, diaspora, etc., and what that means. And then I responded and I said, the grass is greener where you water it. Because I arrived in Australia thinking, well, I am coming from a managerial, these are some of the expectations. I mean, I'm coming from a managerial, I've had a lot of professional success. I'm award-winning in project management and community engagement. I was a Mandela Washington Fellow at some point in time, received young bright minds, accolades at some point in time. I arrive in Australia, no one cares about your previous experience. No one cares about your education qualification. First month, my wife is the one that has got a visa. So she needs to go to work, but we've got our daughter. That means that I'm grounded at home for a month and a bit. I'm now doing the chores inside the house. There's a shift of roles there. What does that mean as a man, and especially coming from a culture where there is roles defined? I'm doing the dishes. Well, I was raised as more so like an only child because my brother was not around, so I'd do those things. So not difficult for me, but doing the ironing, making sure that my daughter has bath time, making sure that she's fed, etc. It's difficult. Then a time came when she went to school, and now I needed to start looking for work. Can work be found? No. My first job was cutting the grass at one of my pastor's place. God bless his soul, because we had run out of savings. My wife's salary was, in that moment in time, was not able to sustain us, and we were quickly running out of funds. It was getting messy really quickly, and we are not people that most of the time would say, remember, I spoke about my upbringing and no expectation. So we would not say, you would not know, you would meet me in the street, I'm smiling, or everything is fine. But at home, I know things are not in order. I think my pay for a 2-hour job there, it was $70. I was happy because I came back home, bought a grocery for $70, and I knew that our week was done, at least for that week, you know. My second job, a friend of mine approaches me and says, well, before that, I'm an assistant as a painter, another pastor, different pastor this time, and it speaks about communities and how they are essential in welcoming people that are coming from abroad. I was warmly welcome, and they were creating opportunities for me to ensure that we could feed our family. So another pastor that does painting, he says, come in, can you be part of the team? I'm assisting with painting. Is something that I'd never done before. I'm learning things. It builds character, man. You learn to be humble. You learn to be appreciative of the opportunities that have come your way. The last one, and this one I should share because there's a popular story with that one. A friend of mine comes from South Africa. She had been in the country for a year, and she's also finding it difficult to get jobs. She approaches me and says, Fredy, I've always had this idea of starting a cleaning business. And I think that would be very successful. You are hardworking. I'm hardworking. Why don't we start this? And I said, this is what I've been waiting for. Let's start it. As someone that has started many ventures in my university, I was up for it. So we start this cleaning venture. Remember, we're business owners and employees at the same time. We get many small businesses, and one of the biggest we got to clean, it was like a office, I don't want to call it a tender, but an office offer. And this was a place where they made cars, you know, panel beating, serviced cars, etc. So it's massive. We had to do it 2.5 days. The paycheck is huge. And I remember one day, one of those days, I am on the toilet duty, scrubbing the brown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gloves are there. I'm suited up in my gloves. Masks are there. I've just neglected to put it on. I'm scrubbing the brown, and all of a sudden I hear a droplet in my mouth. By the time I realize, I said, it's already in my mouth. Well, this has been disinfected already. I just swallow.
Wow.
But that moment said to me, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I am in this moment right now, but this is not going to be my end. Quickly, within a week, I was within a school space which was different, more relaxed, and my ladder started to kind of pan out from that. So difficult lending, character building, which is very, very important, and ultimately finding your tune to get into a space that speaks to where you want to go.
Yeah, this is exciting stories about how, you know, character is shaped when you move into the diaspora. So I want to speak about right now, you have not been in the country for that long, but already previous leadership of the ZQCC thought you were the right person to lead. I think my question would be, how are you seeing it? How has been the expectation? I don't know if I should call it an expectation of the role and everything that is, you know, tied to that role.
Yeah.
I don't know if my question is clear. Yeah.
So maybe coming into it, I think when I arrived, I always knew that community is part of me. Remember, I said, raised in the community, by the community, for the community. So one thing that was very quick is to say, how do I get into a place of service? So I attend an independence gathering, and we are lucky to have family here who are very eager to introduce us to the right people, and them knowing where my passion lies, introduced me to a couple of people, and special mention, man, since we're in Queensland, to Auntie Gracious, a powerhouse in community work. She is on the ground, not only working to improve the lives of ordinary people, but also creating platforms for people to express themselves and serve the community without expecting anything in return. It's rare to find germs such as that. So I end up with her, who then speaks to the president at that time, Dr. Wanda, who then actually interviews me. And one of the questions that he asks me at that moment in time is to say, why would you want to be part of ZQCC? At that point in time, I was applying to become a secretary. We went through this whole discussion, and I get into leading, obviously, as a secretary, join the executive. I see the work that we do in uniting the masses of Zimbabwe within the Queensland community, and how important it is in building a community. How the presidency came is me running away from it, very much so, on a daily basis, and people saying, maybe it's something that you should be thinking about, until the president himself also affirmed and said, maybe it's something that you should be thinking about. And I tell you that before the AGM, until this last day, this was just the day before the AGM, I'd been running away from this role because I know what it means for the community to look to you and to serve the community in a way that is impactful and that will make a difference. So coming into it, the reality is this: I don't take it for granted. Someone that I was speaking to said, even when you're looking at it, never should it be a job. It is ministry. So it goes back to that notion of how do we serve? How do we get into a space and bring about meaningful change? Is that the change that is right for the people that you're serving? Is that the change that they want? Is it even necessary to go through a changing process? So a lot of things going about, but what I like about the role, and you were just speaking about the expectations and the outlook, is that it's a small baby, started recently 2 years ago. But when you go to the back end, to the work that has been put in by the founding leadership led by Dr. Wanda, amazing machine with systems that are defined, protocols that are established to make sure that whatever it is that we do, we are accountable, we are transparent, and we are impactful. So I love working in such an environment.
So what can we look forward to in 2026?
Look, a bulk of the work is community-centered. My philosophy, and I guess it aligns with the philosophy of ZQCC, is to say, how do we unite the masses of Zimbabwe in Queensland to start working together? When I go back to my time in Zimbabwe, I was born in Masvingo province, went to Bulawayo province, came to Harare as a province, went to Mount Darwin, which is Mashonaland Central, ended up in Matebeleland North. Meeting diverse populations of the Zimbabwean community, I would imagine that those are the same people that you find even in Queensland. Where are your Kalanga? Where are your Nambia, your Venda, your Tonga, your Shona, your Ndebele? Can we bring them to a place where these diverse forces come with their diversity to build a community that is thriving, that is conscious of its need and able to be self-sufficient to provide for those needs. So practically, what are we talking about? I mean, there are projects that have already been started by the team that was before me that I think are excellent projects. We are talking in ZQCC about building a school of our own within Queensland. Zim Roots is the name that has been given to it. And we're saying in this space, how do we build a platform where our kids, one of my daughters is 6 years old, coming into Australia, there's a lot of struggles that she goes through to assimilate. The school can be used as that platform where those kids that are coming from Zimbabwe, maybe Shona speaking, can be trained so that they can assimilate better and quicker into the Australian community. But we also have kids that were born in Australia. How do we ensure that they do not lose their heritage and are in touch with their culture? This school can be that space where we are teaching each other. Think of an excursion where we go to and shout out to Bint Farm, where we go to Bint Farm and we spend the day there. What our kids are being taught in that space is to milk cows, is to use badza, a hoe, to cultivate, where our kids are playing the games that we used to play when we were young, and apada. As a way of socialism, can we take them out of the graduates and introduce them to what is part of our identity, what is part of our heritage and culture, so that they too have a little bit of themselves as they grow up? And I'm passionate about that. We are speaking in ZQCC, and this one I'm passionate about. We have got 11,000 Zimbabweans in Queensland. And I'm asking, dare I use this platform to ask all Zimbabweans in Queensland and say, if one was to sacrifice $100, it's not US dollars, 100 Australian dollars times 11,000 Zimbabweans, we would have 1,100,000 in our bank account. If we were to approach any ministry in housing or those that are responsible for land and say, this is how much we have, please allocate to us land for public purpose because we're engaged in community work which speaks to the agenda of the government, we would be able to find a space of our own. This could be a center of excellence, where we speak to how our kids can go into these spaces, which is our own, owned by Zimbabweans, run by Zimbabweans, funded by Zimbabweans. Can Zimbabweans come to a place where we fund things that take care of us, things that speak to our own development? Can we stop being reliant on grants and start creating platforms that can allow us to be self-sufficient? And maybe starting with having our own space could be that. If you look at some of the progressive nations, Chinese, they would have a center of their own. When you go into that, young kids that are 5-year-olds, they're assembling earphones and headphones. They are being taught to be productive members of society from a young age. Why can't we do that as Zimbabweans? In that space, we could even have a small warehouses where I am changing my microwave today. Let's put it in the warehouse instead of the pavement, so that when I come in as a new person, there is storage of things that can be useful. Soft landing for Zimbabweans or Africans coming. Doesn't have to be Zimbabweans only benefiting from this, or Africans coming into Queensland. So it's questions like that to say, how do we rally the society? And it's not a question that I can answer on my own, but I believe that every Zimbabwean that is watching, let's come together, have this conversation. How do we build spaces, that conducive environment for our kids, for ourselves? How do we build environments, build monuments that outlive us?
Thank you so much, my president, my brother in Christ, Fredy, for joining me on the first episode of Diaspora Connect. And I believe your story will inspire a lot of people, those that love to, learn from what others have done or are doing. I think for me, this is a very inspirational story from the rural areas of Mount Darwin to Queensland, Australia, leading a group of 11,000 Zimbabweans. For me, that is very impressive. And I don't know, what are your last words to our viewers today?
Thank you. Thank you for creating this platform. I think that it will have a lot of success. It is the Lord's work that you are doing. And so stealing from the question a time to say, my wish for you is that the Lord opens doors for you that no man can shut.
Amen.
That his hand be upon you. He says in his word that I go before you and I level all mountains.
Oh, yes.
That every obstacle that will come your way, the Lord is ahead and preparing you a soft spot.
Amen.
That his word be a light unto your feet, guiding you, leading you. As we do this work to inspire, to build a community that is informed, to build a community that is engaged. And this platform is going to go places. So thank you for having me. My parting words, and in most cases, I speak to young people because I am young. Much of my job at Southwest Africa, we were speaking to thousands of young people. At Eskom Expo, we were speaking to young people. So I usually speak to young people, and these might be teenagers in Queensland. These might be university students in our community, or anyone that might be watching, is to say, from my story, one thing that I always say is that I never lost that ability to be curious, the ability to always ask questions. Questions are good. Even when you don't have the answer or don't know where to get the answer, ask the questions. Don't stop being curious. Find inspiration, which is the second thing that I want to say. And some people think that finding inspiration is expensive. No, it's not. So find inspiration where you are. Find it in the ordinary things like the scribblings that are written in paper. We call them books. Find inspiration. Find it in songs that we listen to, in the movies that we watch. If that is not adequate, find inspiration. Find it in the roads, because we know that the roads are machinery that has been built, but they lead us into endless possibilities. Find inspirations in the buildings. These are the four walls that house us. Find inspiration in the sea, in the dams, in the rivers, because they are the bodies of water, and water is the essence of life. Find inspiration anywhere and everywhere. That's what I am saying. Find inspiration in the sky, because they lie to us and they say that the sky is the limit, but now we know that the sky is the beginning of endless possibilities. But Godfrey, find inspiration within yourself. That's most important, because within you, that is where gift collides with passion to give you perfect purpose that will lead you to your destination. I would just like to end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fredy. And thank you all for watching. Catch you on episode 2.
Thank you.
Out.